Hello, everybody, and welcome to Engage 2020, and thank you for joining my discussion today on data as a service. My name is Chris Colyar. I'm Chief Technology Officer here at Amplify, and what that basically means is I'm responsible for selecting the best technology partners in the industry, as well as making sure our teams are delivering the best solutions with those technologies. So today we're diving into the topic of data as a service. As we were brainstorming earlier in the year for what we were going to speak on at this conference, this is one of the topics that one of my colleagues came up with, and immediately I got excited. Data as a service definitely interested me because of all of the confusion I had in that area. So let me start off with identifying a little bit of that confusion. So I have a love-hate relationship with something that I call weighted terminology. So weighted terminology for me is when we use words that have very specific meanings, but that could be somewhat confusing to you if you have A, different meaning, or B, have never heard that word used in that way. An example, we're here at the InterWorks conference. So if I say the word repository with a capital R, chances are you know exactly what that means, and you know a lot about that. So me just using that word has already elicited a pretty large response from you. Same with, we're all data experts. If I say the word taxonomy, there's a lot of weight that's going into that, and we can have an entire conversation just about that word. So that's why I consider weighted terminology. And then I love it because of how efficient that helps us communicate. A word is worth 1,000 words. But I also hate it because that may add so much confusion to so many of our conversations. If you're talking to somebody from a different organization or from a different technology stack or from a different experience set, then you might be using the same words with two entirely different meanings, and you might not know that. So, one of our jobs as consultants is when we interact with organizations, we have to spend a lot of time understanding their vocabulary and what they're really saying and how they're saying it, and then helping them understand our vocabulary, especially when we're introducing new technology platforms and new concepts. So data as a service was one of these weighted terms for me. I did a lot of research on it, got a lot of different answers. Sometimes data as a service was represented as cloud hosting data models like data warehouses. Sometimes it was a layer of analytics and insights that sat on top of a cloud hosted model. Sometimes it was an integration layer that sat on top of that cloud hosted model. But those were just three different definitions, and none of those really resonated with what I have seen as data as a service. So today, what I wanted to discuss was two definitions that we have seen, and these are actually customers of ours, and things they have done, which I think qualify as data as a service and ended up being very interesting use cases, as well as being pretty cool representations of the power of an MDM program and how to further leverage the work that you're doing with InterWorks into something great. So I'll start with our first definition. This one is pretty architectural in nature. So let's break down first InterWorks' role in the environment. So you've got the system stood up, you're using it as a PIM or as an MDM. You're onboarding data into the system, whether it's product data or location data, customer data. You have some enrichment going on with that data. You're calling users to actions, you're validating it. You're making sure that it has to be of a certain quality standard before you're moving the data forward. There's a lot that you're investing in your data, and that's all done in the InterWorks platform. But at the end of the day, that's all InterWorks is doing. It's giving you great data. And while that is a lot, that's not enough to operate your business. You also have to have it in your ERP system to transact on. You have to have it in your content management system to show to your customers. You have to have it in your WMS to receive products. You have to have it in your OMS to be able to fulfill products. There's so much going on with these special systems that the role of InterWorks, while it is to get the data and make the data great, we then have to integrate that data to all the operational systems. So that requirement means a significant portion of your time in your IT organization will be to connect these systems together. There's a lot of strategies for doing that more efficiently, using middleware services and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's where we see a lot of that cost, which then leads to a lot of impacts. We have some concept of coupling between systems, excuse me, which then means that when you want to change a system in your ecosystem, you're going to have to then redevelop some of those integrations. And it also adds a little bit of rigidity to what you can do and whether you can add new systems easily and stand them up, or whether those timelines are going to extend months. So this customer, use case one, was a large brand retailer. So the problem statement that we started here with was pretty similar to most MDM programs we start, and probably pretty familiar to most of you. So their current state was a bunch of disparate systems. They bought the right system at the right time to solve the right problem, and they did that over and over and over. And here we are years later, where nothing's connected, nothing's working together. There's not an overall strategy. And finally, the cost of that has caught up. And they're saying, great, we have to solve this. The integrations between those systems over time were very fit for purpose, very rigid to the system's requirements, the minimum amount of investment at the time to get things going. So there's not really a core strategy there. And because of that, you have some what I like to call nonsense requirements that are kind of bleeding through the organization. So something one system needed might change how they interact with data when it's irrelevant to every other system. And then by that same token, through that chain of systems, they might have data that makes no sense at the end of the day that got propagated through, or data they really needed at the end of the day wasn't created until the last mile because the systems upstream couldn't handle it. So probably a similar situation that you've run into. They bought InterWorks, they entered into a program, let's build a core data strategy, let's implement it, and let's have an enterprise-wide view of how we're going to look at this data. So one of the unique things here, though, was that their IT team was strongly engaged. And there was a lot of buy-in and a lot of collaboration between the business teams whose problem we were trying to serve, and the IT team who was really acting as our partner to help solve that problem. And one of their ideas that their IT team came up with is, let's not just stop at building out a middleware platform and really integrating these systems more effectively. Let's go beyond that and build out a data service, in this case, a product data service. So while business is helping us build out a plan to govern the product data, and we're working on process improvements, we're working on getting more users engaged with the InterWorks platform, the IT team was focused on building out a product data service to serve all of the systems in the same way. Now, the way they did that is they built out a web service that was scalable and was real-time, that any system could pull down their definition of data. So in this case, we had one canonical enterprise definition of this is a product. Here's all the data on the product. Here's all of the relevant attributes, stocking quantities, pricing, core data to describe the product, dimensional data. It didn't matter. We had one definition that the entire organization could use as aggregated from all the constituent systems. Now, InterWorks played a critical role because we were helping drive a majority of that data that was non-transactional. We defined it, we applied the governance to it, we provided it to the data service. But then they added to it with other operational data and then presented it to the world. So what that led to was an ecosystem where every system was communicating with that product data the same way. It meant they now had flexibility in their system, their ecosystem, to remove old systems or purchase new systems that could solve new problems and immediately stand them up against live data on this data service, subscribe them to that, and begin work. So it really helped them, instead of just focusing us on solving, like, here's the problems that we've aggregated over the last 10 years, it let us take an opportunity to solve the problems for the next 5 years or 10 years, because now we're taking our fix of the problem and then projecting it into the future and kind of future-proofing their ecosystem. So it was really cool. I'm a technologist, so I really liked the way they did it and what they were doing. But then, we're trying to solve problems. So really, what were we doing? Why? What did we accomplish by doing something really cool? Well, the first thing was the new standard. So for this customer, the new standard meant that they have a long-term organization-wide agreement on what their data looks like, and that will outlive every individual system. They are committed to this. They've almost built their own software solution, if you will, by bringing these different systems together behind this product data service, so they can stand behind this, own this, and drive it forward in the future. Like I said, that also leads to accelerating onboarding. So now they can be much more flexible on the IT side with how they're going to stand systems up. They don't need to talk to different owners from different systems to bring stuff in. They can talk to, they can just subscribe to the service. And then if they want to change some of the data that the service is providing, we go through our standard governance processes, which leads to the final thing is we've really unified governance across the organization. So we've leveraged the power of InnoWorks to do what it does best. We can model the data, structure the data, call users to action, validate it, speed it up. There's a lot of stuff we can do with the data. But now we're using this product data service to make that data receivable and actionable by all of the other systems that we had nothing to do with in our implementation. So the dream there is really your product data service. So your first data as a service is you're building a product data service. It's an external complementary system, which to InnoWorks and to your other systems, which is aggregating stateful data. So in InnoWorks, is it staged? Is it in production? Is it has it been validated to the first level, to the second level? We have very stateful views of data. It's taking all of that and it's providing this high availability, stateless aggregate view of our master data, your transactional data, and letting all of your systems get the most value out of it. All right. So data definition 2. This one's actually a little more exciting than the first. So as a technologist, it's really cool to build out a product data service that spans 20 different systems and treats them the same. Definition 2 is really cool because it was something I had no concept of. This was taking the data, taking the work we did, and instead of just getting the value out of the effort, it was getting the value out of the data itself. It turned it into a commodity that was, sellable. So what do I mean by that? So most organizations, we engage on a data strategy and implementation program with them. We look at MDM and the data objects in our system as data facsimiles of the real world. So you manufacture a product, what's going on in InnoWorks has no bearing on the finished good coming off the end of the line. However, the finished good coming off the end of the line, in today's world, you can't really do anything with it once you wrap it up onto a pallet until somebody orders it. They can't order it till they know what it is. They know how big it is. They know how much it costs. They have to have the data. So we typically, whether it's customer data, location data, product data, we're modeling data after these real world scenarios and real world processes. And so we're trying to help make your core business more efficient by having more efficient data management practices applied to that data. So that facsimile is moving faster. So we're going to have maximum impact, minimum effort to generate ROI. That's our standard approach when we're doing strategy and implementation. Some of these organizations, and like this one in particular, they had that. We had an ROI target, presented a business case, built a program around it, different release cycles, and we started in on that journey. We're going to fund the investment by having that much gain. But we had a key stakeholder on the customer side that had acted a little bit as a visionary. And I liken them to the mad scientist or the classical inventor. He was constantly looking around saying, okay, this is a problem we need to solve. And we're going to spend this much to solve it. We're going to get this much benefit. But then he also said, is it a problem that somebody else needs to solve? How much would they pay for it? How much would, in his words, how much would I pay for it if somebody else had already solved it? And what is it going to take me to do it? And so by constantly looking around and saying, is there a way to do something else? Is there a way to do something better? Is there a way to do something differently? With the lens of him knowing his organization and his industry so well, we were able to collaborate and come up with a really cool solution. So our second use case involves around this gentleman and his our customer, the large automotive retailer. So if you've ever interacted with automotive data, you're having that flashing exclamation point as well. The data is very complex. So when I walk into an automotive retailer, I don't say I need an L172 bulb. I walk in and say, hey, here's my car. I drive a Honda Civic of this year, and I need my trunk light burned out. Help. And from that, a product is recommended to me directly. Now, the way that's done with this complex is through the complexity of this data. There are tables of every vehicle ever manufactured and sold in the United States. There are tables of every configuration of those vehicles, whether you have the EX or the LS, and then what the various options are for those. There are tables of every position with every part type and position that part type can be fit in in a vehicle. So it's a dome light versus a glove box light versus a trunk light. And then the data required to sell me that product is the SKU itself. So I need to know about that SKU, but then I need to know about the application. So I need to know that this SKU fits in this vehicle that has these particular features or configurations in these positions to solve as this part type. Now that's really, really complex. And MDM systems are great in the automotive space because they're able to solve a lot of those problems and map that data together. And thankfully, there are standards that help map this data and map those applications. But unfortunately, there are standards, that's plural. And what this means is manufacturers, in order to actually sell me that product, they have to tell me all about the SKU. They have to tell the retailer in this case, here's my SKU, and then I'm going to map to the standard all of those vehicles, those configurations, those part types, those positions, et cetera. I'm going to tell you all about the product. And the retailer is going to then consume that and then present it back out to me. But a lot of manufacturers are spending a lot of time just trying to get their product data into those standards. And because there are competing standards, they can't just do it once. They're doing it twice. They're doing it 3 times. Different regions have different standards. Different retailers use different standards. So this cost can grow and grow and grow. And for some automotive manufacturers that are smaller, that have a smaller product portfolio and are doing very specialized work, that cost can be exorbitant. So now they're having to spend a lot of their time doing something that isn't their core competency. They're not an IT shop. They are a manufacturing facility. So that means that their data might be slow, which hurts the retailer because now the retailer might have new vehicles coming out this model year that they don't have data on and they won't for 6 months. The data might be inaccurate because the manufacturers aren't spending enough time to make sure that the data is reflective of how it can be used. And the data might be limited. There might just be holes in their catalog that are uncovered because manufacturers have decided that they don't have the time to enrich against every vehicle, so they're specifically targeting, or they might not even know that which vehicles it covers. And that bad data from a manufacturer actually hurts the retailer. So that means that your catalog isn't complete, or that means that your customers are now returning products that don't fit, which is a cardinal sin in automotive, because if you sell me the wrong part when I told you what my problem is, I have a reduced chance of trusting you the next time I need a part. So our original project to solve this was to come in and implement a system using MDM to map those standards into one internal standard. So if we can take standard A and map it to an internal standard, and then we can build our catalog off the internal standard, and then we take standard B and map it to the internal standard, we can now be more flexible with how we receive that data from our manufacturers. We can reduce the burden on them and increase our accuracy and completeness of data at the same time. And this is where the visionary came in. While we were talking about structuring the standard mapping and how that would fit into our program delivery, he made the obvious now comment of if we can map standard A internally and standard B internally, can we map A to B and can we map B to A? Light bulb moment, of course we can. We have all the data, we have built the mappings, we have the intelligence and the ability in the MDM platform to structure these things. So yes, we can. And he said, great, if that existed today, I would definitely buy it. So there's value in that solution alone, regardless of the return we were already going to present by letting their manufacturer, easing the burden on the manufacturers. He determined that, hey, this process and this data that we're creating is going to be valuable in and of itself. So he went and took it to his supplier community, a few of his trusted suppliers, and he said, hey, would this be something you're interested in? And would you pay a transaction fee for something like this? They loved it. They're very excited about it. So what we ended up doing was building workflows that let them upload data, which would then be consumed by the retailer for presentation in the retailer's catalog, but then also give them the ability to request that data be translated into these other standards and then receive that file back. And they could take that to another retailer. They could take it to other regions, but it's their data. But it let this retailer sell them that service. So we opened up an entirely new revenue stream based on work that we were pretty much already going to be doing to make our lives easier. But one of the things it also did is it kind of changed the nature of the relationship of the supplier to where now the supplier is also the customer, in this case, to the retailer. And now that also makes this retailer a trusted advisor of the supplier. We became the MDM automotive experts because now we had mastery of all of the standards. Very exciting story. And it was really cool to see this retailer become one of the industry leaders in the digital space for automotive because they had this ability. Now, pretty unique story, pretty cool. And then a lot of people are going to say, okay, well, yeah, that's fine for that story, but how do I apply that? How do I commoditize my data? And that's where I, rely on you. And I say, okay, well, you tell me. And so my thought experiment here is, if you could make a wish with the data that you have today, what do you wish you could have? Like, what would make your life easier? And so what is that wish that you're making? Okay, great. How much, if that wish came true and it was available today as a service, you could subscribe to it and get it, how much would you pay for it? Okay. And now that you know that, how hard would it be to build it? And if we're right side up on how much you would pay and how hard it would be to build and how many people would actually pay for it, then there's something we should talk about. Like, that's probably a revenue stream that you could be creating. So data has a commodity. There is value assigned to it. Quick example is also seen are catalogs for similar clinically equivalent for medical devices, and how you expose those against your product portfolio, your competitive products, to empower sales and empower buying decisions. Or even if you're a manufacturer and you're structuring D2C and you're really successful in a niche market, maybe you can help build out and start selling other distributors and small manufacturers, start covering their product portfolio into different commerce sites. So those are two other kind of data as a commodity things we've seen, where our investments are being multiplied within an industry to do something more and solve a problem that we didn't know about, our customers did. So in closing, that's two definitions. We're talking about weighted terminology. So I'm only covering the two that I've seen, which is the architectural in nature, where we are creating an internal service, as well as a commodity. Both of these are focused on really taking the investment you have, not just recouping it through ROI and our standard means, but making it something that you can then resell, whether it's internal customers or external customers. You want to make it something that you continue to grow on. And that will help you continue to build funding for your MDM program and continue to expand your footprint, solve more problems, and hopefully making life better for more and more people that don't even know why you're at this conference right now. It's frequently you're here at an InterWorks conference, you've implemented InterWorks or considering it. That is like critical step number one. You have to have good data. You have to control it. You have to govern it. You have to be structured. You want to reduce error. That's great. But that's really for us step one on a larger strategic initiative. One of the things we like to tell our customers when we're framing up projects is that the finish line for us isn't the end, that should be the beginning. So the win that we achieve isn't just a win and we go home and pat ourselves on the back. We look at it like that's the new normal. So like the bar has been raised. So that's where we're going to start from the next time we do something. So then my call to action for you is, are you taking advantage of your advantages? Have you taken all of the effort you've put in today, and are you getting the value back out of the effort further than just we maximized impact here or reduced cost there? Thank you very much for your time. I really wish I was there in person. Really enjoyed the conference. It's probably a little bit of a blessing that I'm here digitally. I lost a fight to a child safety gate last night, so I'm limping around. So it's probably easier on me to be sitting here. But I really appreciate your time. Would love to discuss any opportunities you see in your organization, either for commoditizing your data or effort, or if you're looking at investing and building a product data service, that we could talk about a couple of our customers and what they've done. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And finally, again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to meeting and talking with all of you. All right, have a wonderful conference.